Travis was desperate for Uber to become popular in China, since it's a market of nearly 1.5 billion people. But very few international tech companies do well in China. So Travis invested billions of dollars into giving away free rides and bonuses to drivers, just like Uber had done when it started out in other cities. However, in China, this didn't go quite so well. Scammers in China started purchasing caseloads of cheap smartphones and set half of them up with driver accounts and half of them up with passenger accounts. A scammer would then request rides from one of their passenger phones and use one of their driver phones to accept it. They'd then drive around the streets with dozens of phones spread across the seats. Now remember, the rides were all free for the passenger phones because of Uber's promo codes, and the driver phones still kept the money for the ride too. Plus, the driver accounts got extra bonus money that Uber was offering to new drivers. In other words, the scammers were getting paid twice for every fraudulent trip they did. And after riding around for hours and racking up a huge fare, the driver would simply cash out the money, completely reset the phones, and repeat the process again with brand new Uber accounts. So basically, scammers were making loads of money by exploiting Uber's promo codes, and Uber was losing millions and millions of dollars on fake trips. The thing is, because of an Apple privacy update, Uber were not allowed to track IMEI numbers, which is the unique number associated to every smartphone. Therefore, they couldn't tell when fraudsters were just wiping their iPhone and making a brand new Uber account to claim the free bonus payments over and over again. And yet, despite all of the money Uber was losing to scammers, Travis refused to cancel the promotions because he knew Uber wouldn't succeed in China if they didn't offer riders and drivers free money for initially joining. So instead, Uber found a way to bypass Apple's rules. They inserted some hidden code into their app to track the data they needed, which would help them stop scammers making multiple new accounts from the same device. But doing this completely broke Apple's terms of service. Uber disguised the code so the App Store moderators wouldn't notice. But Apple did eventually find out, and they were furious. They threatened to ban Uber from the App Store completely. In many ways, this example epitomizes Uber, because on one hand, they felt they were simply doing what was necessary to beat corruption and save their company. But on the other hand, it's yet another case of Uber completely disregarding the rules and just doing whatever they wanted. But even without all the scammers trying to rip Uber off, things were hard enough for Uber in China as it was, because there was a rival app that offered the same service called Didi. And because they were a Chinese company, the Chinese government heavily favored them. Didi would also pay local taxi operators to protest Uber and send fake texts to Uber drivers telling them Uber had closed down and that they could come work for them instead. Didi also told some employees to go undercover and apply for a job at Uber. Then if they got hired, they acted as moles, collecting private internal information about Uber and its plans and strategies. When Uber had begun in the US, it was them who were the ones using such shady practices. But in China, the tables had turned. Eventually, after billions of dollars of losses and fraud, Uber made a deal with Didi, where Uber would stop operating in China but get a 17.7% equity stake in their business. Uber's investors were actually very happy about this. But Travis was frustrated he hadn't won the battle. He'd wanted to be the first Silicon Valley entrepreneur to truly crack China, and he didn't like the idea of compromising instead of winning, even if it did make financial sense. The whole experience with China had really just made Travis even more cynical and truly believing the entire world was against him and Uber. And in a way, he was right. Even Uber's own drivers had started to turn on them, and Travis ended up getting into an argument with an Uber driver that got recorded on the car's dashcam and went viral.
What if I changed the whole business? What? You dropped the prices on black. Yes, you did. Did with $20. We started with $20. You know what? How much is the mile now? $2.75? You know what? What? Some people don't like to take responsibility for their They blame everything in their life on somebody else. For town car? Good luck.
In the middle of all of this controversy, Uber's other co-founder, Garrett, who had taken a much less active role in the business, publicly confirmed Uber's plans to get involved with self-driving cars.
Is this something that you think is going to play a big role in Uber's future?
I mean, I think it's pretty much inevitable. I mean, it is going to happen.
Of course, self-driving cars would eliminate the need for drivers, and so many Uber drivers saw this as yet more proof Uber didn't care about them at all. However, from Uber's point of view, they felt they had to start working on self-driving cars, because otherwise another company, like Google, could come out with a ride-sharing app of their own that uses self-driving cars that could put Uber out of business. So Uber actually started poaching some of Google's self-driving engineers so they could work on this technology for Uber. Unfortunately, this actually led to yet another lawsuit for Uber because Google claimed that Uber had tried to steal trade secrets from them about their self-driving vehicles. However, the real irony to all of this was that whilst Uber was busy fighting attacks on all fronts, regulators, competitors, public backlash, driver backlash, China, Google, lawsuits, and more, Uber's biggest threat of all wasn't any of these things. Uber's biggest threat of all was itself.